Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Founder, the podcast that tells the real stories of the people who make recruitment agency growth possible. I go straight to the source to discover the impact of great strategic partnerships between founders and their leadership teams and uncover why bringing in the right leadership team is crucial for the founder to build the business they want. We discuss what it takes to build a fulfilling career in agency without necessarily being a founder yourself and share the successes of the key people that, alongside the founder, make the agency work. It's unfiltered, honest and unscripted and gives a real insight into the people that make the agency work beyond the founder. So on today's episode of Beyond the Founder, I am delighted to be joined by Rob Daniel, who is the Group Director of Marketing and Strategic Development for CCL Global, who are a US and London-based agency specializing in permanent and contract recruitment in the energy sector. Rob's journey is so fascinating. He started off in business development, moved into recruitment, and he went into a marketing role he created for himself in a small but very high-growth agency when 2018, when strategic marketing wasn't really a thing. So not only did he have to create a role for himself, but he had to get the buy-in from the owner and founders of the business to be able to deliver. At the time, there was no metrics to success. So what he's had to do is get the buy-in, consistently deliver, believe in himself, and continually show progress and development through his marketing strategies. The business has gone from strength to strength. His insight is phenomenal. When we dig into his story, how he progressed, and also what he believes the future is for strategic marketing, incorporating technology and AI. Rob's a really great guy, and this episode is packed full of insight. So whether you are a strategic marketer interested in the recruitment sector, someone within marketing in recruitment, or just someone who is genuinely interested in strategic recruitment agency growth, this episode is definitely one not to miss. So Rob, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Beyond the Founder podcast. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, Paul, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
No problem. Now, obviously, we know each other. I know who you are and where you come from, but if you could just give us a minute or 2 minute overview of who you are, whereabouts you are, the business and what it does, and we'll go into it from there.
Yeah, so obviously, as you can hear, I'm from the States originally. I live in Houston, Texas. Currently the Director of Marketing and Strategic Development for CCL Global. I've worked here for coming up on 7 years now. It's a small family-run business, and I came to know a couple of the employees just through my personal life, actually. And when I came on board, it was just having a conversation that they were looking to add a few pieces to the company. So I moved over here. But before that, I was actually working with one of my current colleagues, his wife. She still works at the same company where her and I met. So just making those connections and maintaining that relationship, came over here to CCL. My background has always been in some sort of marketing and communications field. I kind of dabbled a little bit in sales, which is what I was doing before this at an engineering and inspection firm. So I'm not a very technically minded person. I'm not an engineer myself, but just like I say, having the sort of marketing and communications background and knowledge and skills, coming to Houston really for the opportunity to work in more industry. I'm originally from Oklahoma, which was a great place to grow up. That's where I went to college.
So did you move to Houston for this role then? You relocated
for my previous role? Yeah, for my previous role. Yeah, and it was interesting how I got that role. It was also like a friend of a friend knew the family who owned this company, and same thing. There was like, yeah, they're trying to hire basically like a field coordinator, like a project manager for a lot of their the work that they do. So that's what I did originally, and then I moved into sales at that company. And it was moving to Houston was a big change for me. Texas was always kind of second home. Growing up in Oklahoma, my dad and his family, they're all from Texas. They still live in Texas. But I grew up in a town that had less than 40,000 people in it. And then moving to Houston, got several million people in it. It was a big change for me, for sure.
So just to take a step back then, so just very high level, CCL Global, what do you do?
So we're a recruitment firm that specializes specifically in the energy sector. Historically, when we started back in the early 80s, it was just offshore oil and gas Over the years and the decades, we've kind of diversified not only outside of just offshore drilling, but outside of oil and gas. We now do staffing for renewables, for nuclear power, for now like emerging technology like energy transition, carbon capture, battery storage. So now we have a much wider footprint across the energy industry as a whole.
Is it just that you're based in the US, or is it a global business?
So we originally started in London in the early 80s, still a British-owned company. We have an office here in Houston, and we're just getting set up in Canada as well. But a lot of our operations were centered out of London. Since then, we've expanded into France as well. We've got a satellite office in Paris. We actually have 3 offices in Africa, which is pretty fun for me to kind of work across all our different offices and understand the different locales and the demands and the requirements for each one. So it's very, very interesting what I can work on.
You are per man contract business.
That's correct. Yeah. So we're majority contract. That's where our bread and butter is. But we have a decent mix and a growing footprint in perm and executive search as well.
Fantastic. And in terms of headcount, how many are you at? What are you up to?
So permanent staff, we're at about 50 people. So we run fairly lean in each office. It's a mix. Each office is basically a mix between sales, recruitment, and then like the ops and the finance mechanisms to support all of our contract business. But globally, we manage about the mid 500s, I think, as far as contractor headcount. So again, we do a really fantastic job. Our ops and contractor care support team, they can manage quite a lot of people that are out on projects. And we do the mobilization support, demo, visa, work permitting, administration, payroll. We do everything. So like I said, we have a pretty impressive back office.
And I wanted to talk to you. So your story, I was really impressed with your story, because you're this lad from small town Oklahoma who is nothing to do with recruitment. You know, you're not even, are you qualified? Were you qualified in marketing? It was business development. You're in sales, were you?
Yeah, my background was marketing and communications. And then I only spent about a year in sales.
Yeah. So you went into sales, then you managed to, how did you end up in recruitment? Because it's always interesting to hear how people end up in recruitment.
To be honest, when I was approached by, again, at the time, my colleague, her husband, I was asking these same kind of questions, be like, so what do you do? And I genuinely had never heard of or was aware of specialist agency recruitment firms. I knew obviously of the more high level sort of C-suite retained executive search, but I was like, I didn't really understand the energy industry as a whole and just how much of it is supported by recruitment agencies that help contractors get assigned to these projects. So I didn't even know what recruitment agencies did really. So when I moved over here, it was a pretty steep learning curve that I had to figure out, what's the value proposition. And again, that was from a sales perspective. So I was going out to meet with clients, which I was quite good at as far as having, commercial conversations, but the recruitment aspect part was new to me. So I had to learn the recruitment side. Okay, so you reach out to candidates and you're qualifying jobs, but they're not your jobs. They work at a client, so understanding how that worked was pretty interesting for me. But once I kind of learned the technical aspect and the benefits of it, that's when I saw sort of almost a gap at CCL to say, well, wait, we're not really marketing these services all that well. Here's what I think we should do. And I kind of strategically morphed my role back into marketing and just grew it from there. And that was pre-COVID. That was in 2018.
How many heads are you at? How many people in the business at this point?
We were about half the size. We were about half the size as our staff. And then as far as the contractors we were managing, it was even less than that. We were probably managing fewer than 200 contractors globally.
Wow. So it's 500 odd now. So you've seen a gap. You've understood that there's your skill set can be utilized very effectively in the business. So how does that conversation transpire? And did you have a plan and an idea of where you could take this at that point, or were you just sort of happy to run with it?
Yeah, the benefit actually was that even though we're in Houston, our managing director, who was born in London, he sat here sort of probably 80% of his time. So I was lucky that his office was just right around the corner from where I was sat back in 2018. And he has a fantastic open door policy. Again, it's a family run company. His dad started the company, so it was not this like big scary, oh, I got to go. Can I even schedule a meeting with our managing director? It was just kind of knock on the door and walk in and just say, hey, so I've been thinking about these things. It was kind of both of our brainchild for a while. And it was just to tackle the low hanging fruit of let's look at the website, let's look at the messaging and the content, let's look at our sales material, let's look at our social media presence. And then later on, we can look at the brand itself, the brand identity. Does it need any sort of refresh or update? Then let's look at strategy as far as how we're marketing the services, how we're selling, how we're closing. It kind of started with just a couple small projects on my side as far as look at the website, look at LinkedIn. That's what I'll do. I'll manage that for about a year and a half. So the focus started small, and then it's just continued to grow and grow as the business has over these last 5 or 6 years.
Well, that's brave. I mean, the foresight there is excellent because if I think back to 2018, recruitment marketing, it was very much a business development driven industry. It was get on the phone. It was even email campaigns like they're not like they were now. It was literally get on the phone, cold call. People had started to use LinkedIn, but it was basically more of a job board. So in terms of building a brand, people's websites and the phones, it is typically how you would generate revenue and build a reputation. So to have the foresight to see that, was it hard to get that buy-in, or was it something that was fairly straightforward and you were able to crack on with it?
Yeah, the buy-in itself, the idea of it, everyone was pretty on board. You know, you can throw out those I guess buzzwords, and everyone goes, yeah, that all sounds great. And then when you turn to try and put certain things into practice, you realize it kind of conflicts with their old habits or what they know has worked for them, whether it's from the senior sales members on down to like sort of the mid-level salespeople. Obviously in recruitment, if you're making placements and your clients are happy and someone's coming to you saying, hey, I think we should do our marketing or our selling in a different way, it's a little bit difficult, that change management, right? Is to say, this is what I think we should do. This is how it's going to benefit you. Here's the tools that we need to help make that change. And it wasn't reinventing the wheel. I think what we did really well during that time frame was to say, we're not like an industry disruptor. We're not here to pretend like we're the absolute best and on the cutting edge of something new to recruitment. We just knew that we were comprised of a bunch of industry experts that have been doing this for a long time. And we needed to figure out a way to take that to the market in a more efficient manner, a much wider audience. Again, like you said, that hard slog of just call after call after call, figure out a way to make that more efficient and get that message up faster.
And were you on your own? Did you have a small team at that point, or was it just you?
I was on my own. So it was myself basically pitching these ideas to the managing director. And then it was go back to my desk and find the solution, figure out, do I need to sort of spearhead this and put these things in place, or do I need to look for either an agency to help us or what resources do we need to actually make that stuff happen? So it was hard. It was difficult.
It's hard because how do you quantify a budget for that? They're going to want to know how much you're going to need. And at the moment, you can't. But then it becomes about return on investment. And I've always found with recruitment marketing, the challenge you have is how do you demonstrate that return? Old school, people can quantify. I make 20 calls, I get through to 4 decision makers, I get a deal in. And then it's up to me to take that through the process. With marketing, it's very difficult to tangibly quantify the return on investment and the impact you're having. Nowadays, people are used to it. So they accept there's a cost element to that, and it's a slower burn, and you can measure your ROI in different ways. Back then, how did you sort of tangibly demonstrate value? Must have been difficult.
Yeah, and again, you can pitch an idea, and the idea sounds great, but fleshing that out into practice was the most difficult part. Because you used the phrase earlier, email campaigns. If we went out and invested in a new tool to like automate or try and generate more inbound leads, again, you can sit there and say that, and the salesperson goes, yeah, I would love more qualified leads that I can either call or I can funnel into my own email campaigns. But then following that through down to, did it result into a placement? I think myself included, we didn't have a whole lot of we didn't realize how much of a change that would result in our operations as well. Like we needed to totally change how we were tracking all the way from, let's say, a system that's automating, again, email campaigns. That's just one aspect. How do we make sure that the investment in that, either that system or the licenses or the time spent training, results in one placement or two placements? So we had to
Exactly.
change CRM, we had to change our reporting metrics, because we weren't a very KPI driven business as far as at recruiter X, how many CV sends did you have today? How many calls did you make today? How many voicemails did you follow up on today? We didn't focus too much on that. And so shifting into, yes, we need to measure KPIs, but in a smarter way. Because also we trust the people that we hire. We don't have like graduate schemes to hire very, very young people and try and train them and get them up and running. Everyone that we hire has at least 5 years of experience in full 360 recruitment. So we had a slight peace of mind to say, you kind of know what you're doing technically. But now we need to change everything that we're doing to ensure that if we have a new starter, let's say, again, because we're a very contract heavy business, on Monday, we have sort of those breadcrumbs to go to trace back where that came from. So it all took a lot of time. At first, we were kind of, it was a little bit guesswork as far as like those early days, the return on investment. And all we could really do was look at activity. Once we invested in a new system or a new strategy and let it run for a couple of months, it was just having conversations internally. Hey, how did that go? Or did it result in any meetings? Or how many meetings did you go on? And then it was just kind of funnel that back up the chain of command and say, initially, it seems like it's working. Let's stick with it. And then we can, measure and see if it actually, results in something.
That's phenomenal. You must have absolute faith in your ability to deliver, because you've had a year, your marketing background trained, you've got a year in sales, you've come to this recruitment agency, you've identified a gap, you've gone to execute it against the fact that you've got mature, and I don't mean age, I mean experienced recruiters in there. They know what works for them, right? So to try and get them bought into something that's going to take them away from what they're doing that results that gets results, to something new that's untried and untested. So the foresight to deliver that, and then the wherewithal to stay with it mustn't have been easy. So I think that shows from your side, real good consistency, dedication, and craft. That's really
Yeah,
impressive.
I appreciate you saying that, because I'm not going to lie. I think, like all of us do, I definitely battle the whole imposter syndrome, as far as like I'm presenting these ideas and I'm following through with these and I'm trying to get these things in place. And even as they're working, still in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, but something's not quite right. I never really had that like aha moment of like, oh wow, this is incredible. It's all working. I was constantly kind of pushing myself to wait for that sort of light bulb moment, which either happens or it doesn't, to say like, oh yeah, pat on the back, job well done. It's kind of an ever growing practice for me to try and let's test things out. Again, like you said, having not only trust in myself, but our company, my managing director, to have the faith to say, yeah, let's give it a shot. It all had to kind of fall in place to work, and it's still a work in progress. But yeah,
And when
definitely,
your competition doing the same, were you ahead of the curve in terms of the competition, or were they doing the same? Or
see that was part of the challenges. From my perspective, we were behind the eight ball, definitely. Again, some of those early projects that I worked on, I was like, we're 5 to 10 years behind on some of these things, and it needs to happen now. And earlier, when I used the term like small projects, it was because we needed to put a tight deadline on it. We needed to get things up to standard from just a perception standpoint in the market. How do we appear in comparison to our competitors? And that was a challenge in itself, as well as a lot of our more senior recruiters came from like massive recruitment agencies. And all we did the whole time, especially from like a competitor analysis standpoint, was look at those agencies, and we were just chasing them. One of the things I think we did well was to say, okay, we need to stop doing that. First of all, we're not a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded recruitment firm, so we need to stop pretending like we are. And how do we become more authentic and true to ourselves, again, in the commercials and the messaging and the marketing and the branding? So that helped, I think, take the pressure a lot of people to feel like you're not constantly chasing a competitor that ultimately is playing in a different pool than you are, and to go, where do we fit in, and how can we get really, really good at where we actually fit into the market.
I like that. That the approach is brilliant. So it's realistic. It's allowing people to play to their strengths, taking unnecessary pressure off. And I suppose it gives them the confidence to start adopting some of these processes that you're trying to put in place. So this is brilliant. So you've gone in, you're obviously making an impact, but you've progressed quite rapidly up the chain. So how did that progression evolve? Because you're creating roles as you go, right? So how does that work?
Again, a little bit as I'm looking back, it was kind of like I was just stumbling into it, really, where I didn't necessarily think or put the pressure on myself to say, hey, this next thing I'm bringing to the table is going to revolutionize our business. Therefore, I think I am some sort of, director level marketing mastermind. It was not like that at all. It was as I developed, as the business developed, we all kind of just grew together, really. And it was, okay, I'm going to shift into a marketing role. Therefore, I think it should be like a marketing manager because I'm implementing strategies. I'm finding resources to help, either internal or external, and I'll be managing that. So yeah, marketing manager makes sense. So when I went from sales into our global marketing manager, it was still a little bit, our favorite phrase internally was like finger in the air. Let's just kind of see where things go. Let's follow this path for a while and see what happens. And yeah, luckily, a lot of the initiatives and the ideas that we tried were paying off. And then we went through a big, we don't call it a rebrand, but a brand refresh, where we basically just sat down and took a look at the brand across the board, and looked at the logo, messaging, and everything. We redesigned the logo, redesigned tagline, mission statement, everything, but keeping the core of what we did well at the center of everything. Because I feel like I did know if I came in and tried to say, we need to start from scratch, get rid of all this, we need to change the name, we need to do everything different, we need to be innovators, disruptors, it just wouldn't have worked. So I think because my vision aligned really well with the MD as well as the team, because I would have to go and sometimes literally sit down at other people's desks and say, okay, walk me through this process and how do you do this? Because I'm trying to find a way to either do it more efficiently for you, or if we can turn this into messaging or like a unique sales proposition, let's figure that out too. So it all worked really well together, and just sort of over time built up into, now again, I lead all of our strategic initiatives across the board, not only operationally, but for marketing and for sales. And I work closely with all the regional directors in our offices. I'm lucky that I get to go to London at least once a year and sit down with their team and kind of do the same thing I do here in Houston. So it's been a really good fit. And I think if we were, again, a publicly traded company, if we had shareholders, if we were aiming to try and sell or flip it to venture capital or do something like that, it probably wouldn't have worked out this way.
So at this point, have you got a team now? Are you running a team, or are you still sole contributor?
It's a nice mix of both. Now we have sort of like operations administrators in each office that help with a lot of what we do. So I do have sort of a resource in each of our office. We have a marketing agency on retainer that helps with not only branding and messaging, but content creation, social media management. Just in the last 6 months, sort of advising at a senior level, sitting down with our MD and figuring out like the personal brand of the managing director and the regional directors, how can they improve on that? So I manage that team as well in that process, and as far as what initiatives do we want to take on next with them. So it's kind of the same as it was 4 or 5 years ago, but it's a lot more of maybe like a robust effort to keep this stuff maintained.
But so where do you sit in the organization? Is it a board level role, or is it one below?
It's effectively one below. Yeah. So we have our managing director, who is also the owner, and then his brothers, because again, it's a family owned company, are like non-executive shareholders. And then basically the next level down is myself, our CFO, and the regional directors.
Yeah. So the leadership team sits below the MD. And to talk to me about then, so you're obviously settled now in Houston. Family life? Are you family life? How does that work? Happy where
Yeah,
you
it's
are?
great. I've got no kids, but I live with my partner, Christina. Our kids are 3 dogs, so that keeps us busy enough. Yeah, I think as far as my personal life and my family aspirations, everything it's really well harmonized with like a great work-life balance. I tell people that working for a British-owned company, we got to see things like, PTO is always a sort of a nitpicky thing in the States. You grow up being told that like, oh, 8 days holiday, it's amazing. And then working for a British company, they're like, yeah, no, you take all the holiday you want. And it's a much better understanding of if your home life is happy, your work life will be happy. Yeah, so from that standpoint, everything works really well together.
And that's why I asked, because it strikes me that what you're doing, I can sort of see the dedication and hear the dedication. And it strikes me that I appreciate you've got a load of support and you've got regional offices, but it's all what you're implementing and what you're delivering is massive. So I suppose you need to have a really happy balance there, or else you wouldn't be able to deliver it effectively. And so what's the plan then, Rob? Where do you see this going over the course of the next X amount of years, 12, 24, 36 months and beyond?
Yeah, I think as far as professionally, I think we all have a really good idea of what we want CCL to be in the next 5 years. And that's kind of maintain, smart growth. Again, we don't sit down and review and discuss these ideas of, well, if we could secure, 50 million in funding, or if we could do this or that, or let's shop around and see if anyone's interested. The long-term goal is to maintain what we have and grow it, which is exciting for myself. Again, at the level that I am in the organization, see what opportunities there are to either build more, lower down in the org chart, if you will, or to see what other new areas we're going to expand into means more opportunity for myself. I think I mentioned to start the call, we just got set up in Canada, so we may be looking at a brick and mortar office there. In Africa, we're expanding into Namibia. We just expanded into Dubai. So all of these opportunities could result in basically trying to repeat the same thing that we've done here in Houston, here in London, and our legacy offices in Africa, and just continue that on, which for me, I think is exciting possibility.
And would that mean travel? You happy to travel and get out and see these places and see the world while you can?
Yeah, absolutely. I love traveling. I think I got to go. I visited 5 different countries just this year, and that's always a goal of mine, is to go someplace new each year. So I started this year. Actually, I was in Argentina in January. Then I went to Canada, and then again in my business trip over to the UK. From there, went on to Amsterdam, went to Switzerland, went to Nicaragua just about a month ago. So yeah, I travel as much as I can. So it's really, really cool, the idea of this global business, even though we are large enough to have that global presence, but we're not so big that, fighting to be like, oh, can I go visit this office, or maybe send me on a business trip here? It's all just easy conversations to have. And if the need is there for me to go support one of our other offices, yeah, I love the opportunity to go there.
I think what comes across really clearly, and what I was hoping would come across, is, the impact and how important it is in modern day recruitment agency to have a really strong marketing, brand and comms function. Strategically, how important that is to the business. And a couple of things I was going to ask you, but first of all, what advice would you maybe give to anybody who was thinking about coming into the recruitment industry from a marketing perspective, maybe wasn't sure about the potential, the size, the opportunity? What advice would you give?
Yeah. As far as advice, I would just say have an open mind and learn to be resilient. Those are the open. I'm a very open-minded person. I'll explore any idea, and I'll chase anything down that we think is worth looking at. It's the resilient side. If I face any sort of either criticism, or it's not quite working as fast as I hope, maybe we should pull the plug. Just being resilient. If you're trying new things, it's one thing to get excited about things working, but if they don't work, or if they take longer than you expect, having that trust and faith in yourself to say, just keep going. That I think is a skill that a lot of young people should have, is that belief and that resilience in yourself. Not to the point that it's stubborn, because again, you have to. That's why I think those two things are paired: having that open-mindedness with that resilience. to try new things and to stick with them. Because that's, whether I knew it or not, that's what I was attempting to do here. So definitely looking back, that would be the advice that I had.
Fantastic. I think that's brilliant, because one thing I've noticed over the last few years, and it's one of the main reasons I started Beyond the Founder, was there's been this shift change from recruitment being a hard trading floor sales type role where you're ringing bells every time you do a deal. I'm sure there's a place for that, right? But you've got to be cleverer than that. Technology is impacting businesses. Strategically, people are getting cleverer. Commercially, from a comms and a marketing and a branding perspective. And personally, I believe that role, that marketing role in agency, is one of the most crucial roles now. And it's a great example of how you can have a phenomenal career in recruitment agency without necessarily being a founder, because typical founders aren't from a marketing background, but yet that alliance, that marketing partnership with the founders and with the owners is really, really important. And what do you see? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to that. I consider myself lucky that I did kind of dabble in recruitment sales, business development for a bit. So while I was not recruiting, I had to go out and sell recruitment services. So I got a firsthand look at, like you said, the notion of the recruitment agency. And it's maybe not the same perception here in the States, but the UK was kind of the birthplace of agency recruitment. Was this hard and fast sales environment, like heavy calling environment, like KPI to death. It's a great opportunity for young people to make really good money, especially in contract business. There's a lot of money to be made in contract recruitment. But seeing the feedback from our clients and actually going out and being in meetings, really, they were just looking for someone that they could trust. Because again, a lot of what they would turn to us for was very technical and very difficult problems that they had. Again, we need to deploy a whole team of project engineers to Singapore, and we don't have the finance, we don't have a payroll mechanism, we don't really know. So it was us having to bring those highly technical skills in a manner that they could trust. They didn't really care whether we had 60 recruitment consultants that were all 22 that are just hammering the phones, looking for jobs, looking for candidates. They really wanted to just know that, are you someone that we can trust? So that really helped inform what I was bringing to the table once I sort of pivoted back into marketing to say, that's what our clients want. And I think that's where the industry is headed. It's like you said, there's so many things that are changing the industry that I think, from my perspective, our clients sit there and there's really only one thing they want to know is, can you help me? And
Yeah.
we need to reassure them of that. Is, if they do pick up the phone or if they do send an email, is someone going to be responsive? Is someone going to be able to actually meet that need and deliver on it? And then there's that support. Hey, how did it go? How are they going? Is there anything else that you need? It's not just churn and burn on to the next sort of vacancy type business model.
Well, that's excellent, that. And that, my next question was going to be related to that. That's leads us in nicely, because obviously you've got technology which is gathering a pace. There's so much different AI now out there and whatnot. But I think what it boils down to is still that. It's the strategic relationship side. It's offering and delivering real value, tangible value, as opposed to just transactional recruitment. And so what do you see as the biggest changes coming up in terms of recruitment marketing? How do you think technology will impact that? And obviously, how do you then make sure you're retaining that human touch point and increasing touch points, not taking them away via technology?
Yeah, I think you qualified it really well there. Is, I think the development of new tech, especially AI, because that's what everyone is discussing now. I think I think we have to be very careful in our industry, specifically with AI. I think there's a lot of tools that can be had to adopt to increase efficiencies. Again, like a 360 recruiter, they do a lot. They recruit, they go on client meetings, they bring in vacancies, they speak to candidates, they arrange interviews, they do everything. So for them to have technology, or whether it's powered by AI or not, to make their life easier is fantastic. And we've leaned into that. We've figured out how we can be more efficient as an organization, but we've made sure that we almost have that barricade externally to say, but we don't want this to take away from the experience that our clients have. And that if a hiring manager, again, if they need to speak to a recruiter or a candidate, or if they want to look at a profile or a resume, but they can still do that. We're not going to introduce some overly complicated dashboard to request a profile and wait for in a queue to see if you can, there's so many different tools out there right now that AI is changing recruitment for the better. But I think if you're trying to hire for your own team and you ask yourself the question, what process do I want to go through? What guidance do I want to have if I don't have the time or the know-how to recruit and build my own team? Behind all of that, you need someone who knows what they're doing and kind of guide you through that process. So we have no big plans of introducing, again, when we went through our rebrand, we're not going to invest in the latest tech that's going to be some sort of recruitment hack that clients have to then subscribe to. Like, if you think about, especially at very, very large corporations, if you're a mid-level manager, you probably already have 5-6 different platforms that you have to learn and train and manage internally. The last thing you want is a vendor or someone trying to help you saying, oh, well, if you just download this, or if you just sign up for that, or if you just subscribe here, then you can get. We still want to reassure people that they have the support they need, without having to go through an overly complicated technical series of dashboards, apps, whatever.
I think it's about, you hit the nail on the head when it's about increasing efficiency whilst maintaining the human element and the touch point. So I think from a marketing perspective, what always fascinates me is you hit the nail on the head. Back in the day, it was you have to make 500 calls to get through to X amount of people. And you could measure that ROI. Nowadays, if you get it right, you can spend your time and your resource creating a brand, creating effective communications that reaches people in the right way very, very quickly. Managing that though, if you get off a phone, if you make phone 25 people, you get through to 2, the admin that throws off is measurable and manageable. If you do something that reaches 2,000 people and they're all wanting a piece of you, to manage that becomes very, very difficult. And that is where I think you can leverage technology to take away some of the burden. But I've got a massive belief that you have to use all of it for the benefit it's intended. So if you're going to reach out to people, let them know who you are, let them know why they should use you in the service and the benefits you add. And take away the pain and the hassle that goes with that, not create more work for them. And what it should be doing then is allowing you to increase your time on the touch points and that interaction, and not so much on the admin heavy. And that's where I think having a really strong marketing leader in your business, in recruitment in modern day, is absolutely crucial, because that's what you should be, in my opinion, delivering. And from what you're saying, that's exactly what you're delivering. And why the business has gone from 200 contractors to 500 without tripling in headcount, because obviously the efficiencies you're creating by the processes you're delivering are working. Well, I think that's really impressive to see, because as a business,
and that was a really unique, I guess, journey for me to go down as well. Because again, I can look at the market and figure out what should we be doing as a recruitment agency from a marketing standpoint or from a strategy standpoint. But then once I turned around and actually executed that, I loved how you phrased it a minute ago, is when I was sitting down with a recruitment consultant or one of our sales managers and understanding their process. And then I didn't want to appear as though I'm just dumping a bunch of admin on them to say, you need to get this thing set up. You need to automate these workflows or sequences through HubSpot, or you need to look at your, I understood that I was creating more work for them, but it was all through that vein of, this is going to make your life easier. Let's get over the hump of this initial admin. And now, once we have all these things up and running, you will have more time on those personal touch points, which we know we're very, very good at. We're very good in person. We're very good on the phone. We're very good on a Teams meeting when we're actually chatting with people. But we also know these other things need to happen in the background. Email follow-ups, candidate follow-ups, quantitative surveys, qualitative surveys going out to our contractors, to the people that used to work for us, to hiring managers. Hey, how did you find that last process? All of these things that we need to be doing will funnel through these automated tools, oftentimes powered by AI, which then frees you up to spend more time at what you're good at. As soon as everyone internally sort of registered that, they go, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. Absolutely. Yeah, I'll spend the time getting these systems set up or learning this dashboard or sitting on a training. So yeah, I really liked how you phrased that because that's exactly the approach that we took.
And you've just described really, really well and very succinctly just the type of benefit that having someone like you in a business can bring. I think it's brilliant. It's so interesting to hear. I could just talk about this, as you can tell, for forever. But I think what I'd like to do just to kind of wrap up is I've got a question that I ask everybody, and it's, you've not prepared for this, so I apologize. But typically and it can be anything, it can be professional, personal. But what's the one thing you wish you'd have known earlier?
I think the one thing, this ties into the notion of working on building up resilience. The one thing I wish I would have known earlier, that as long as you stay committed to something, you'll be all right. Again, you may have these big aspirations, you may have these big dreams and goals, and when you try them, you may fail. They may slow things down. They may piss people off. You may not agree with everyone. People may not like you all the time, but you'll be okay. Going through that process is just natural. It's just part of it. And just not being so hard on yourself, not beating yourself up if things don't go exactly the way you planned, because I've discovered that things never go exactly the way you planned. You always have to change halfway through. You always have to kind of pivot. So yeah, just having that ability to just say, whatever the solution ends up being, it's going to be all right. So I think that's helped me a lot. I still have to remind myself a lot, especially as we're about to go into the new year. It's new budgets, it's new strategies, it's new ideas. What comes next, which can be still quite daunting for myself. So just taking that moment, taking the deep breath, and going, yeah, it'll be okay. That's
absolutely
a long time ago.
I love that answer. I really love it. It combines resilience with self-belief, with getting rid of the imposter syndrome, which is sticking by your principles and your guns, and knowing that you'll deliver, and just being flexible with yourself, not being so hard on yourself. Part of the process, there's ups and there's downs, but it will work out because you're doing the right thing in the right way. I love that. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think there is so many different angles of value for so many different people here. But what it has really, really demonstrated clearly in my mind is the absolute value that someone like yourself brings to the modern recruitment agency, and that you can have a fantastic career without necessarily being a founder yourself. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no, well, I appreciate that. That's very, very kind of you to say, and I appreciate that. And yeah, I discovered there's so much opportunity in an industry that, like I say, when I came in here, I had no idea even what recruitment value meant, or what we did. So building my career, starting from that big question mark to where I am now, there's so much opportunity in recruitment, and I think I'm seeing a shift out there in the market of more agencies adopting similar mentalities, which is great because they value the skill sets that people bring. They want to support people. They want to see them grow. So I think, the recruitment industry, I think over the next 5 years, is going to be a very, very fun one to keep an eye on.
I totally agree. And I'd love to get you back on in the future and just see how the growth has gone, geographical locations and the team and the size and the business, and just whether the predictions for AI are right or wrong. But we'll talk again if you're happy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, cheers, mate. Thanks for coming on, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the show. I really hope you enjoyed it. First and foremost, we always try to add value to our audience, be it a founder looking to scale or a leader looking to progress up the chain in the agency world. And if we can do this in a way that is easy to watch and entertaining, then for me, that is job done. Once again, thanks for listening, and until next time.